back in the 2024 lead and a very busy calendar ahead. Fewer than 11 weeks until the November election, 18 days until the first presidential debate between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. A lot can happen between now and then as these candidates make significant plays in key battleground states. In fact, with the exception of a debate or two, maybe three, we'll see really what happens and what matters right now, where the candidates go, what kind of money they spend, and we've seen it throughout the course of this week. Look at this map. This is the CNN forecast, 270 to win. Where you see yellow states, those are the states that CNN rates as toss-up states, as battleground states, the states where the candidates are focusing. How do you know they're focusing? Well, just watch where they've been. Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, leading up to the convention, pretty much hit every single one of those yellow states. In prime time last night, before the vice president gave her speech, you saw the governor of North Carolina speaking. You saw a congresswoman from Georgia. You saw the governor of Michigan. You saw several key voices from Arizona. They know what they're doing. It's intentional, and they're not the only ones. The Trump campaign as well. Throughout the course of this week, think about where the former president has been. Well, he started the week off on Monday in Pennsylvania. Then he went up to Michigan. Then he went to North Carolina. Today, as we've seen and talked to Kristen Holmes and Elena Treen, who's on the ground for us, in Nevada and Arizona. Where they're going tells the story. Wait, there's two others that I didn't talk about. Oh, yeah, J.D. Vance was in Valdosta, Georgia, and also in Kenosha, Wisconsin earlier in the week. They're traveling because they know turning out those voters in those states matters enormously. Georgia, well, Joe Biden flipped that in 2020, only won that state by a little over 11,000 votes. What about Arizona? Just over 10,000 votes. Razor-thin margins. Every visit matters. Every dollar spent matters. What are we talking about when we say dollars spent? Well, let me pull this up and show you the spending right now in terms of where things stand right now. Presidential spending in battleground states. Pennsylvania, obviously everybody talks about how all roads go through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Huge sums there, over $70 million for each campaign. But you tick through the 7 battleground states, tens of millions of dollars. They know those 7 states and possibly just tens of thousands of voters could decide this election, and that's where everybody's going all in. What do these types of ads look like? Well, let's take Nevada, where the former president just gave his remarks at a tax on tips event. This is what we actually saw from both campaigns.
Under Donald Trump, a violent crime wave, and Trump ordered MAGA extremists to kill the bipartisan border security bill. Trump just talks tough. Kamala Harris is tough.
Attention. President Trump is going to end all taxes on Social Security benefits and end all taxes on tips collected by service workers.
Let's get right back to our panel. Christy, I was struck when Tim Walz said this. Take a listen.
We got 76 days. That's nothing. There'll be time to sleep when you're dead. We're going to leave it on the field.
Just all in on the whole coach thing there. Back some PTSD unsolvable. They're down this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not one to draw conclusions by any one or two things. We talked about the momentum. We talked about the spend that they already have out in terms of ad buys, hundreds of millions of dollars in reservations. Why aren't they out? You see the former president has been blitzing all week this week.
I think they get a well-deserved break for a day or two. I'm pretty sure that 74...
Sleep till you're dead.
All right, but the other thing that there was a big theme of during the convention this past week was this is now the time not to rest on our laurels, but to get out and to have the people who are energized by this convention then bring it to the streets. There was a point at which Kerry Washington had everybody get out their phones and take a video and then basically send it to people and to show that we're ready to do stuff. That was a theme, obviously, from Michelle Obama as well. So again, I think it's okay for them to take a 24 to 48 hour break while the rest of their millions of supporters get out there and contact some voters on their behalf.
And my sense is like Jen O'Malley Dillon and the campaign team don't actually have the weekend down. They're also candidates probably aren't actually taking days off. Post-campaign bumps, always something we talk about, usually tends to happen. Will we see it here? And do you think it matters overall?
We very well might. The Trump campaign didn't really get one, but it also was something we couldn't really measure because no sooner had everybody flown home from Milwaukee when the race got completely turned on its head. So whether or not convention bumps are a thing that happens this year, we don't know. We'll find out in the next couple of days. But I suspect she might get a small bump, if only because she is somewhat more undefined. If this had been a convention nominating Joe Biden, I don't know how much it would change. Voters know Donald Trump and they know how they felt about Joe Biden. But there are enough voters that aren't sure how they felt about Kamala Harris. They probably weren't the folks that were staying up until 11 midnight watching it, but they may have seen clips and said, let me give her a second look. Wouldn't surprise me if you don't see some of those undecideds at least briefly saying, I'm open to the idea of Kamala Harris.
Which raises a question, because the Trump campaign is competing for them as well right now. We were talking before the show. I was out with the former president on a couple of those battleground state trips. Have they gotten their footing back on some level, right? He was in all those states. He's doing all these events. Where are they right now? Because Chris makes a key point. At the end of the convention, we were all looking around going, wow, I've never seen the Republican Party this unified. They felt like they were on a glide path to 270 plus a lot. Everything has changed. What hasn't is he still has a 50-50 at worst shot at winning. What about the campaign?
Yeah, the campaign is, I think, finding its footing once again. Obviously, President Biden had promised that he was going to stay in. There was no way getting out. And so to have that kind of flipped on its script really did put everything aside. But I think when Vice President Harris named Waltz, I think that kind of put everything back into perspective. You saw very strong pushback on his record, on the questions that his comments continue to raise. They were a little more prepared, I think, for that announcement and to come back and show the American people kind of more the truth of Governor Walz and where that lies. And I think that they're going to be just fine in pushing back, especially now that we saw so much fluff and not as much substance as we would have wanted to see from the convention.
And they clearly want him on a very specific message. You could see it throughout the that event that we saw earlier in Nevada. It was tax on tips, small event, talk about the policy, which makes this interesting. And I'm asking you, because we're both on the Hill together, there's kind of an under the radar story of. Let me pull up the invitation. It's an invitation for a gala at Trump's Bedminster Resort to, quote, honor and celebrate the January 6 defendants responsible for that January 6 prison choir song. Trump has been invited to speak. We don't know if he's going to speak. When we talk about policies and message and contrast, and then you get this.
Yeah. Look, I think when you're looking at what happened on January 6th, there were hundreds and hundreds of arrests made for violent activity and for absolute criminal activity that should have been made. What you subsequently saw was really aggressive prosecutions that went beyond the pale. And now the Supreme Court has ruled 6-3, and not in ideological lines, by the way. Justice Jackson joined the majority, Amy Coney Barrett joined the dissent, but saying that it was overzealous, that they were charged for things that they should not have been charged for. They had plucked this obscure financial crime and tried to charge all of these defendants with this to enhance the criticism, to enhance the pleas, and to enhance ultimately the sentences, throwing hundreds of cases into question. And so I think having a fundraiser to pay for some of those legal fees is an interesting take. It is receiving more attention, I think, than maybe the attention that was received when Vice President Harris told everybody to donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
Latter point is a political discussion. It's a fair political discussion to have. I think the thing I get struck by, you're trying to pull me into a Sarbanes-Oxley debate, which I would absolutely love. Not going to let it happen. But I understand the lawyer version of this, as you are known to be a very good one. But from a political perspective, on this issue, doing anything related to it seems a little bit bizarre to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll notice he was invited. I don't know if the former president has decided to attend or not. I think there is a large contingency of America who believes that what they saw was massive hypocrisy and difference in treatment between violent offenders at different locations. And so that is sympathetic to a portion of the country.
This was something that Democrats elevated a lot and want to elevate a lot during their convention.
Yeah, I think that is a very weedsy analysis of what's going on here. I do not believe that most people will see it at that level. I think the very top line contrast is something that the Harris campaign should be salivating over, which is they made the theme of felon versus prosecutor a main one of the convention. This allows them to talk about it again and again and again. Look at this. Not only is he a criminal himself, but he's actually standing up on behalf of these other criminals. That is who he is. That's not America. I mean, I would love to have that set up if I were them.